spouse's acts, where they have rights to get in to see their spouse in a like the family rights, like in a hospital, spouse can stay over past, normal visiting hours, insurance, disposition of property, you know.
Oh, okay, well, that's a huge victory.
And you know
But
how
that's
the Christians are going to spin this, like vehicle and stuff? This is the signs of the end times. Everyone is becoming wicked.
I would agree. It's the sign of the end times of stupidity
And bigotry.
and tyranny and bigotry. Yeah, well, it's one of the signs as we slowly go towards being fucking human beings.
The world will go to sin, and the second coming will come to.
Yeah.
Next
Get
book,
another
Revelation.
bottle of vodka then. If we're gonna have some more people come. Yeah.
Get your own vodka bottle, damn it.
But hey, sharing is caring.
You
What I don't
obviously,
understand
yeah.
about this whole apocalypse thing is why is America so important? It's been legal in so many other places for so long.
Because America's the only place with real Christians.
Oh, that's right.
You know why America is so important? Because America, fuck yeah. That's why. Because America is the best, number one.
I agree.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Okay. Interesting thing. I was watching Penn and Teller bullshit. Do you guys know Penn and Teller bullshit?
I love
it's
that.
fairly good.
Yeah, I love it too. So I was watching. I forgot I think it was about the Mount Rushmore, right? Episode, and they had basically some people asking questionnaires of Americans in Washington, I think, and interestingly enough, a lot of I think most Americans actually basically disagreed with the petition, which was that I agree that America is number one at everything, and that the United Nations should basically declare America the best nation in the world. And most Americans disagreed, and they provided valid reasons because America is not number one in education.
Well, I think every country, especially even the first world countries, have their issues and their problems.
Right.
You're not going to ever have a society that is utopic and perfect. God, that would get boring really fast.
I know, right? I would start some wars if it was in a utopia. It's like, this is boring.
If it wasn't for the trolls, I'd have no entertainment at all.
Well, hey, welcome George. Welcome Seamus. George, you asked the topic. What's the topic? There really isn't any. Generally, we talk about the Great Debate. That's sort of our macro scope of the topics. Any topic within it, feel free.
Yeah, no,
What's the meaning of the word Christian, please?
This requires some context, guys, because we were talking for about 10 hours. David Weiser was arguing with Peripheral Prophet about the meaning of the word Christian. So yeah, any topic except that, as Groove said, yeah.
You're online from 10 hours already, or I missed a few hours, or that was a previous engagement?
Wait, say again?
It just said you have been talking about 10 hours, but I'm assuming that is a previous engagement.
Yes. It was a different hangout. It was a previous hangout.
What was it about, may I ask, Bas? If you're talking about it for about 10 hours, it must be a very interesting topic.
No, it was more like very stubborn person arguing. David, sorry, dude, you have to learn to let things go. David Weiser, who is a Universalist Christian, nice guy, but yeah, he kind of tends to harp on things, like this. Yeah, basically, Well, it wasn't 10 hours, like, but a lot of fucking time. Um, I was like, considering career in alcoholism during the discussion. It was beginning to be unbearable. But anyway, hey Seamus, anything new, dude?
Yeah. If
Oh,
there's no real topic at the moment, there is an obvious topic we could talk about today, and that's what's been happening with terrorism this day.
Oh,
I
you're
mean,
talking about France?
yeah, not only about France. You haven't. I don't know how you've been keeping up with the news, but of course we had France, and we had Tunisia, and we had Kuwait. So in France, one person killed. The first thing that popped in my mind when I heard it, because it was in an odd part of France and in a very unlikely occasion to do a terrorist attack. The first thing that popped in my mind was, this is probably some previous employee that had issues with it. And I'm not 100% up to speed on the current data, but I think it turned out to be that indeed the person that was doing the terrorist attack in the name of Islam was also a previous employee of the company in which the terrorist attack took place. So
You're talking about the French, what is it, factory or something?
yeah, it was no, it's an American company based in France, and I'm not sure where where in the United States the head office is placed. I don't know. It's an American company based in France, and it got attacked today, and it had one person decapitated. Nobody knew who it was, and they are from what I got, I'm a few hours behind because I was drawing and doing funny stuff on Google Plus communities, and they say it may be the person's boss who was beheaded. It was a previous employee, but he also attacked it and placed an ISIS flag there. So there are probably several motives and reasons going on in the person's head, the terrorist head, of doing this thing. But besides of France, you also had the major terrorist attack in Tunisia. The great nation of which the first Arab Spring sparkled from, basically, the Arab Spring. It first started in Tunisia, and well, a few months ago we had the attack on the boat tourists, in which lots of people were killed. And today we have the attack on a tourist hotel, which from the last count I heard of it, because I haven't been watching the news for the last few hours, about 27 or 29 people were killed. The terrorists basically drove up the beach with boats armed with machine guns, and they started shooting. And that happened in Tunisia. And then you have Kuwait, in which I think it was a Sunni mosque. I always get my Islamic sects mixed up. It was a Sunni mosque that was attacked, and lots of people died. So you have 3 major Islamic attacks in one day, basically.
Fuck. Are they like connected? Is there any evidence of that?
I'm not sure. I read one news article somewhere that it said it is now 1 year ago officially that the Islamic State was pronounced as a nation, basically. But I'm not 100% sure if that is true. I did not check my data. So it may very well be that today is the 1 year the Islamic State's officially between brackets exists. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the Islamic State will succeed. I mean, it's not supported by vast majority of Muslims anyway, and they're getting their asses kicked from 4 fronts, I think. So yeah,
For France or by
I think
France?
so.
You mean? In which country you mean? You mean in Syria?
No, I don't mean by France. I'm talking of fronts. Like what's the on how many sides they're fighting, right? Because they're fighting on on all sides basically.
Yeah.
On the east, west, north, south,
Battle lines.
battle lines. Yeah, it's also called a front, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
front,
called,
man.
It's definitely called a front.
Yeah, I thought front. I understood French. Front.
Yep. They're not one
You
army.
said front. Yeah.
They're not one army. Arts. They're not connected. All of them. They're just
mean
loosely
ISIS?
connected.
Really?
They
I
are,
didn't know that.
yeah,
Huh.
they're like a ragtag band. They have like loose connections. Really.
Hmm.
Well, that's the problem with determining the threat level. Are they really so divided? Basically, it's still one organization, and perhaps their core area of operation may be divided, and they may be fighting on several fronts, but they're also fighting in several countries with a lot of different ideas on the issue. And besides that, you have the global community which has to deal with it. France, United States, France, and the rest of Europe, and the Islamic countries around that all themselves, Israel. There's a lot of stake here, and I remember putting up a YouTube video about 2 or 3 years ago when basically in Syria Sadat was basically the bad guy, and I proposed in that video I posted online that it would be a very good idea to get rid of Assad as soon as possible. But nobody, of course, no diplomat, no president watches my YouTube videos. I know that, but nobody in the national community basically acted on it. All were having a passive attitude, like, well, we will see what is going to happen. Well, now the last year at least we've seen what would happen when you basically do nothing and stay passive.
I know Seamus wants to add something. Go, Seamus.
Actually, I didn't. I think I had my mic open on accident, but I could add something there. I think at the current time, basically that trying to keep Assad out of Syria and to keep on with the revolution would just do more bad than good at this point. The time's kind of passed for that.
Yeah, but you know, everybody in the West was basically saying Hail Mary and praise to all those Muslims. I'm using the word Muslims as a generalization. All those Muslims in all those Arab countries and North African countries that rose up against their oppressive government. That's a good thing, and everybody in the West said it's a good thing that those people are finally coming out and fighting the oppression, like in Libya, Gaddafi, a dictator basically, etc., etc., etc. But a lot of people said that, but that's because those people are fighting for their freedoms and blah blah. But basically that's bullshit, because sure, you have a country, the people rise up for their personal freedoms and their rights, and they do not want to be oppressed. But the moment these people succeed and you do not replace it with something that can control that country and that nation, and something useful and something righteous, then it's not going to work, and that's exactly what we are seeing today.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, go ahead.
Well, sometimes if you look throughout history, the downtrodden, they don't see it as right. They misinterpret what they're doing, and they see that they're being oppressed, and they see how good it is to be the oppressor. So they want to become the oppressor. They don't want to be just free for their own determination. You see that like in Cuba. They lived under an oppressive government and a corrupt government, and what they do, they rose up, and the guys that were the primary people of that revolution, they just wanted to be the oppressor. They just wanted to be the ones in power. They didn't want freedom for everybody. They just wanted to be the guy not under the boot, but wearing the boot.
Yeah, you mean to say that what's his name in Cuba?
Castro. Fidel
Castro.
Yeah, originally, not his brother.
Well, I'm not buying that. I don't think that. Sure, you would have some persons in the past that, with the sole intent to be an oppressive person and to get everything for himself, wanted to be on top of things. I don't know enough about Cuba and Castro history. I know something from various sources from media. I don't think that in a lot of cases revolutions start that way. You see that in Russia. Look at Russia's history. You had Karl Marx wrote his big book, and then you have Lenin and all his followers in the decades after that, and finally they succeed on 17th of October 1918, I thought it was, where the Navy soldiers first started the revolt against the oppressive regime of the Tsars in Russia, etc., 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 and basically you end up with a dictatorship in the form of communism. It did not start out with the intent to end up as a dictatorship. It started out as an intent to get the people free from oppression, but it ended up as an oppressive regime in the end anyway.
Right, but I'm not saying that everybody involved started out with the idea of, I just want to be the oppressor. There are certain individuals, like with Russia, the oppressive and dictatorial regimes was Stalin, and he was not.
No.
Was a part.
Stalin was only after Lenin died, so they.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Is Lenin actually had wanted the people to be happy, to be everything to be equal. They wanted a certain thing. Now, once Lenin died, Stalin took over. Well, if you look into a lot of what he did and how he did things, he just wanted to be the boss. He wanted to.
Sure.
Yeah, but Stalin was only the head of one faction, though. I mean, remember, right. Stalin basically pushed Trotsky out of the way, right?
So Stalin was the head of one faction. Stalin murdered out the rest.
Yeah, no, he did. But that's
the revolution.
What I'm saying is that Stalin wasn't just the best of a bunch of bad ones. He was essentially head of the worst faction. So
right. That's what I'm saying. Is there are individuals, because you can see it throughout history where there is that shift. Where
the Soviet Union might have been a very different animal if Leonid Trotsky had been allowed to take over.
Right. That's what I'm saying. With Cuba.
But Trotsky was no less a communist than Stalin was.
No,
I'm not saying. I'm saying that there are those individuals who gain power and take power in those instances, not for the purpose of freeing the people or bettering the people, but just to better themselves and to become that the wielder of the power. Stalin being one of those. He didn't give a shit. He killed way too many of his people to really give a shit about him. Yeah.
You know, I know some of the things that Karl Marx said. I have his I have Karl Marx's original writings on an EPUB on my tablet. I haven't gone around with reading it because there's so many stuff I'm reading at this moment. There are a lot of good things about communism. The only one bad thing is that they did not realize when they figured out this communistic system is that it leads to the possibility of one person taking over everything and basically becoming a dictator, and that's exactly what you see happen in all the communistic countries that have tried to be communistic. Even in China, Mao Zedong.
Well,
Russia,
China's probably the worst example for communism. I've always said the Chinese didn't so much adopt communism as one day they discovered a communist wandering through their territory, skinned him, and wore his suit for a while.
It's a different form of communism.
It's a different form of communism. Like a great big fat guy is a chihuahua. Yeah. That's a different form of communism.
China and Russia for a long time were not friends, but they were both communistic.
Yeah. I'm just every time somebody tells me, I mean the Chinese were able to put a front of communism on, but for all intents and purposes, there was very, very little in Chinese actuality, in the reality of Chinese life that conformed to the Marxist-Leninist writings. They did a very good job at making many of their people think that was where it was going. And I mean, there were plenty of communist-esque marchings in the streets, and everybody had their little red book and stuff. But yeah. Anybody who thinks there was any real communism in there, they just weren't paying attention.
To be honest, China is more of a caste system than it is a communist system.
Always has been, always will be. The Mandarins simply put on little red shirts.
Yeah, they presented a nice communist feel to it because of the caste system. Actually fits with it pretty well, and it can be kind of a nice veneer over that caste system, but it is still a caste system, and because people have no say, and in communism,
I have to ask, what do you mean with China is basically a caste system? Because I have heard China described in many ways, but never as a caste system, and I'm comparing it to a country like India. So what do you mean with China as a caste system?
If you look at China, there are different classes of people in China. You have the working class, you have the academic class, you have the governing class, the military class. I mean, you can move throughout those classes, but still there's a certain status difference in those classes.
Well, I think by that regard, many countries have a class, but I think the thing is that it's probably more correct to say that there's limited upward mobility in China. Which tends to lock people in whatever socioeconomic state that they were born into. But that's not a caste.
No. You guys are totally wrong. I recently saw a documentary, if I may interrupt. I recently saw a documentary about the governmental system of China, and I don't recall all the details. But one of the things that struck me very hard is that, I'm not sure what you call it in China, but in Russia you have the Duma, so the basic government system where all the politicians are that vote for stuff and etc. Like who is the next leader. In China, that system, I don't recall what its name is. You have a billionaire who has a few billion of dollars because he's an industrial, also being politically active in that system, and next to that sits another Chinese person who's a person who sweeps streets for a living,
Yeah, but you
cleans
can
up
bet
good.
your ass that guy's in there because of a plan. He's not in there because he suddenly took office on his own. He's in there because somebody in a smoky dark room there decided that it would be a good idea if somebody like him was in government to keep up appearances.
Yeah, he's kind of a.
But the point is, the street sweeper has the same political power as.
Oh no, he doesn't.
No,
No,
he
he
doesn't,
doesn't.
because if he wants to stay in that
He
position,
may not have the same
not-
reach.
and not have a horrible accident, he's going to follow.
Or
people that
simply
put him
find
there.
himself, or simply find that next election when he tries to run again, he simply doesn't have the support. I mean, the Chinese think absolutely nothing about rigging the kind of stuff that you and I would consider sacrosanct. Nothing at all.
Well, if what you're saying is true, then it would only take a few voting sessions to get rid of all the poor people, and China would end up as one big governmental system that.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
That,
I don't know what you're
only
talking
has
about
rich
there.
people
But
on top, and that's not what you see happening in China. So there.
yeah,
Why
because
would we want to
it's
get rid of
not.
the workforce?
I guarantee you the people who are in power in China are not poor. I can guarantee it. I give you a platinum clad guarantee.
Yeah,
I'll cut it. I'll cut it in a piece of industrial diamond for you. I'm not sure of it.
Yeah,
So the whole notion of the poor getting rid of the rich or the rich getting it's a group of political individuals who they're about 1,000 years ago we'd have called them mandarins, but now we call them something different.
I would tell you.
Are actually Chinese businessmen that they own massive amounts of wealth. The difference is that they're basically party members. I mean, I would say it's a little more akin to Nazis socialism. Where if you're a party member, you can have certain things, and you're privileged in certain ways.
Yeah, but even then, there are layers of privilege within that privilege.
Right.
And one of the big differences between the Chinese governmental system and the Western governmental system is that you have to be really, really careful if you want to throw money around to curry political favor in China. You have to be really careful.
Well, we have seen several very fortunate people, unfortunately, being executed because of embezzlement and that kind of stuff in China, of course.
Yeah, but you also have to remember that the Chinese love to make examples.
Yeah.
And
when you're throwing that money around, it's if you throw money this way, are you going to piss off this guy over here? See, that's what you got to worry about throwing that money around, and who you're dealing with is because if you piss.
I mean, the Chinese don't care who you embezzle; they care what it looks like if it gets seen.
Yeah, but from my perspective, I really think you should not underestimate the power of the party compared to the power of money. I think in China that balance is different than in the United States, for example.
Oh, I don't think I am.
In the United States, you see that big money has the power. I'm not 100% sure in the communistic system of China that's also the same case. But I might be totally off and wrong about it because I don't know enough about the Chinese
what I'm thinking is that you have a bunch of individuals who are essentially two ticks to the left of fascists. They control everything, but they've put a veneer of communism over it to convince the average person that it's all about them when it isn't. And they've done this has been the case ever since Mao Zedong. So it's just another grand scheme to keep people happy. And they've done it relatively well. So, but nobody's fooled.
No.
It's like how many communist countries do you know that would be so openly supportive to having McDonald's in their country?
Yeah, China had a McDonald's before Russia did.
Yeah.
Does North Korea have a McDonald's?
North Korea, they probably don't even know what
North Korea is another communist country that isn't quite communist, if you know what I mean.
You know what the funny thing about North Korea? We all think North Korea is basically a communist country.
No, I don't.
No, I don't. Let me say, but the origins of North Korea oppressive system is based on Japanese fascism.
Well, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I mean, they have their own god emperor. They just call him the beloved leader.
Yeah. North Korea is an earth on its
And
own.
Japanese weren't fascist. It was imperialist.
Yeah.
Because it was a oligarchy of sorts.
Well,
That got westernized.
The Japanese government at the time was a militocracy. It was a militocracy whose head of state was a divine emperor.
Right.
You know,
and that was kind of the oligarchy was, you had because you had the emperor, and then the military individuals were kind of the samurai. But
the emperor. If you're talking about Japan as of the Second World War, the emperor had absolutely no power. He was a prisoner in his own country.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Everything happened in his name, but he had no say in it at all. So.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's widely known that he wanted to see if he could make peace with the United States, at least 6 months to a year before the Japanese decided to tentatively reach out to the Russians.
Oh yeah, there's actually documentation showing that he was not even aware that Japan had attacked the U.S. until after the attack. When they came to him and said, "Oh yeah, we're now at war with America because we attacked Pearl Harbor."
I gotta ask you guys. Can you think of a country? Well, perhaps not a specific country. Can you think of a governmental system in which a dictatorship is the best possibility to rule the country?
No.
I can't off the top of my head. I don't know. I mean, I would have to really look hard. Certainly in the 20th century, I can't think of a dictatorship. I mean, there have been de facto dictatorships. I mean, Canada, in many ways, since most of the power has been concentrated into the office of the Prime Minister, in many ways, for the last 30 or 40 years or so, Canada has been a de facto dictatorship. But I mean, it hasn't been a capital D dictatorship because it's not like the Prime Minister could order the army to start rounding up people and putting them in camps.
I'm confused because I do watch South Park. Canada is a dictatorship?
Let me try this again. Because so much power has been concentrated in the hands of the Prime Minister's office, in many ways, Canada is a de facto dictatorship.
You have to explain that to me because I'm from.
I'm sorry. I expect people to come and talk to me with the ability to. I mean, I don't know how to.
Well, let me try to explain because it's
I'm from Europe and I do not know enough about Canadian politics, so.
I'm pretty
Canada,
sure
they have much the same as like with Britain and America in different forms and fashion. You have the kind of the top tier guy, the Prime Minister, us as President, Britain's Prime Minister. Then you have the parliamentary or the Congress or House of Representatives. Well, in Canada, you have the Prime Minister has massive power. He has almost dictatorial power. But there are some things that are reserved to the Parliament and the people that he cannot override. He can't send soldiers to kick in people's door and just drag them out and do whatever he wants with them. They're still
not domestically, no.
Right. I mean, because America's kind of going through the same issues and problems there when it comes to the homeland security and the
just to give you an idea, we never had a version of the Posse Comitatus Act here, never.
You have to explain that because I don't know.
Okay, well I
it's kind of an iffy thing.
Yeah, I listen, and I know I'm going to sound rude to every single person who hears this. No. But when you're on a computer with access to Google, I'm kind of thinking that it might be best if you just took the word on your own and researched it so that the conversation could carry on with its rhythm. I think
No, but you have
I
to
understand.
understand my point. I live in the constitutional monarchy in the Netherlands.
Yeah, no, we have a constitutional monarchy as well. You know, on paper, yes, we do. But over the last 30 or 40 years, successive prime ministers have slowly devolved power from the parliamentary members,
Sure,
from
but
members of the
you
federal
cannot,
parliament, and concentrated it in the hands of the
I,
PMO.
I understand, but you cannot ask of me to know every history, every political history of every country in the world of a people.
I'm not asking you to. Most of this is encapsulated within the actual words I'm using.
Sure.
And in most cases, when you understand the actual words, you understand what I'm actually talking about.
I'll look it up. Canada and dictatorship. So.
Or just you know, or de facto, just you know, the phrase de facto dictatorship, and you know, essentially, you know, I'm not using overly complicated language here, so I that's why I'm sort of doubly scratching my head.
Well, the thing is if you're not familiar with some of these other political systems, and as you keep going deeper, you get the explanation of one thing. You've got you misunderstand, or you don't understand the words explaining, and the terms, and the political structure that's explaining what you looked up. So yeah, I agree with him. Yeah, Google it and dig deeper, because it is a lot more complex than a lot of people think.
Sure.
So just in a simple conversation like this, basically he'd have to basically stand up at the podium and give a dissertation to really explain broadly enough, you know, and in depth enough to.
I know a lot. It's odd to say from my perspective, but I know a lot of United States law than from constitutional law than from my own country's law, because most of the time I'm talking to United States people from America, of talking about the United States subject, etc., etc. Canada almost never comes up, so that's a subject I know very little about. But it's like
just because of America's hat.
Yeah, but it's like Churchill once said. I'm not 100%. I quote him 100% correctly, but you will know the quote. That basically Churchill said democracy is the worst system, is the worst governmental system we ever had, except for every other system we ever had. And we only need to add that for all the democratic countries we have today, every democratic country is totally different than the other.
Yeah, and none of them are what we would consider pure democracies.
Well,
most of them,
yeah, democracy.
Most of them are designed to. They're designed to place some sort of impediment in the way of direct rule by the populace.
Yeah, of course, but that's the nature of a governmental system. Is that
it's many of them were designed that way. For instance, that's why in the United States they have an electoral college. Because it was never intended that the average person was going to be able to select the president, because it was widely believed that the best person to select the rulers of the land were landowners and people of money and people of mercantile concern, someone with an investiture in the country.
Yeah.
So
it was a theory that if you how do you have any how can you have any say so if you have no risk? You know, if you don't have any skin in the game, then you know, and I agree and disagree, but the premise behind it originally was basically, did you have $20 in your pocket, or $20 worth of property? Did you have something to lose, you know, in this system?
I'm not a humanist, but from a humane perspective, I'm not a humanist. It's an unfair system if you have a system like that.
Oh, of course it is. But go and find it. Go and find a system. Go and find a system that doesn't have at least some attenuation. Like, for instance, in Canada, we have a first-past-the-post electoral system, and it's based on electoral ridings. You do not have a one-person, one-vote system in Canada. It's based on electoral ridings, and part of the reason for that, by the way, is because very early on in the democratic notion, we came to the idea of tyranny of the majority. where we came to understand that if you simply allowed everybody to have a vote, they would very quickly vote themselves into the national treasury, and then you'd have a bankrupt country.
Yeah, I think
So-
Jefferson made that quote that a democracy is all well and good until the people realize that they can vote themselves money from the treasury.
Yeah, so
And
we
it's, but it's basically like Karl Marx equality system that everybody's equal, blah 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 blah.
Whoa,
But
what is that noise?
I'm not sure what it was.
Well,
But
somebody-
it did not take the communists in Russia to figure out. It took them, because they had those 5-year plans. And then after a few 5-year plans, they figured out that, well, shit, it does not work when you pay all your workers equal amounts of money, because if you pay your factory boss the same amount of money than your factory worker, then the factory boss has no incentive to do his best to make the company a success. And if the company worker thinks, well, I'm making just as much as money as my factory boss, so why should I put any effort in my work to get this company working? Because I do not have any incentive to work up the ladder and get a better position, because I would still be making the same amount of money. And they figured it out in the communistic system very early on. But of course, towards the populists, because back at that point in time they were the one ruling party. Of course, they lied to the people about it, and they did not tell that they figured this out. But it was basically how communism worked. Shit, it didn't work. So then the communistic party started giving some incentive, like a car made and all that kind of shit. But communism didn't work in the first time they figured it out in Russia. It didn't work. But
Well, it was a
well,
system based on an ideology that refused to take human nature into account.
Yeah.
And any system that's based on
exactly.
ideologies that don't take human nature into account are doomed to fail. I mean, it's really that simple.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, human beings want, they want stuff, and I knew I was in trouble when I was reading up on Marx, and essentially it's like, well, hey, don't want stuff. Oh yeah, let me know how that works out for you. So.
It's kind of the concept of, hey, all you need is food, water, shelter, protection, and that's it, and everything else.
A little sex once in a while.
Well, no, it's like they took all that anything you would consider entertainment or luxury out and said, no, you only need this, and it's the bare essentials is the premise. It's like, well, okay, you shouldn't want anything else than that.
Yeah, people always want the best for themselves and their children, and they want their children to succeed more than they did.
Not always.
Well,
look at America. Not always.
If your kid is a penis or a huge dick, of course not. But you know what I mean. So.
In America, in some situations, they're just a means to an end. They're a means by which to get other people to pay them money.
Your kids, you mean?
Yes, because they're. You saw this heavily in the 70s and 80s with the with the welfare moms. Basically, you got pay. The government would pay to take care of the children. Basically, give money to the mother to take care of the children, based off of the number of children you had. So the more children you had, the more money you made.
Yeah, but you never.
So people started popping out. They didn't care about the kids. They cared about the money they had. Now it wasn't a massive amount like a lot of people try. The premise of the program was good, but like with most things, it gets exploited.
Yeah, but God, that's human nature. Whenever you figure out a fair law, there will always be some people that figure out a way to take advantage of that fair law for
Well,
the betterment of themselves. So
sometimes
it's human nature. So.
Yeah, there's always going to be people that are going to try to exploit, something.
I need to take a break. I'll be right back.
So Gus, you're Canadian, right?
Yeah.
Where are you at in Canada?
Ottawa.
Ottawa. I got a brother that moved up there. I think I can't remember where. I haven't talked to him in years, but he became a Canadian.
Good. I'm sure he's enjoying himself.
Well,
One does not simply become a Canadian.
Well, he got married and got citizenship. So.
Nah, I'm just messing. A lot of my wife's family, my wife's Jamaican, so a lot of her family, for some reason, has either dual citizenship or can go to Canada really easily. And I think it's, I don't know why it is, but anyways, they do for the healthcare.
I'm not a big fan of dual citizenship, but I'm outvoted in that.
You have dual citizenship with what, England?
Not automatically, no. We can as a member of the Commonwealth, I think we can apply to receive papers as a British subject, but I don't know. Why would I want to?
Yeah.
I mean, I love the mother country and all, but this is my country.
Hey Gus, off topic real quick, Gus, but if you go to your Manicam software and click under text, you can uncheck that box and it'll take off that little Manicam symbol.
I don't mind paying my dues. I mean, I use the thing for nothing. Why shouldn't I advertise?
Hey, why not?
You know? If me advertising that on the bottom will help those guys maybe get 1 or 2 more paid subscribers, who am I to say anything? Everybody got to eat, right?
I like your style.
Oh, so United States Supreme Court says gay people are allowed to get married.
Now,
It's the
I want to
end
know
of
if
the world.
I want to know if that pastor said he was going to set himself on fire. I want to know if that pastor said he was, because there was a pastor that said if the American Supreme Court did that, he was going to set himself on fire. I wonder if there's somewhere I can mail the charcoal briquettes.
Oh.
I'll send some hot dogs.
That's right.
Kids like can have a weenie roast over
He
the
deserves
weenie.
big mouth, bigoted fucker. If I hear one more Christian say that they criticize a homosexual lifestyle out of love, I'm going to puke everywhere. Everywhere. On everybody. I'm going to run puking through the streets of my city.
What is Canada's law on that? I never did ever hear. Somebody said that it's always been legal in Canada.
Well, I don't think it's always been legal, but I do think that we got our heads out of our ass a little bit earlier than.
Who keeps muting me?
I don't think anybody
I
does.
don't know.
I was, because you kept on just coming across with this noise.
Oh yeah, don't do that because Bob cannot tell whether or not he's muted.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
I'm
by
on
the
a
same,
Yeah, because I'm on a cell phone, but
Sure, but by the same token, Bob, if you're making so much noise that you're hurting people's ears, man, like,
Well,
and you're
it was.
not always right beside your cell phone and ready to hear what's going on when it's happening. You know what I mean? Like, some of that noise goes right into my ears, and it's pretty loud too.
Yeah, well, I was just muting it. I mean, it wasn't to be offensive or be mean. It was just, somebody was saying something I couldn't hear over that, it kept cutting in and.
you guys are gonna have to fucking deal with it.
Oh, yeah?
I know. I think it's.
Well, I was just doing it so I could hear the person. So I was like, hey. I'll unmute you after I do that if I have to do.
Bob. Fuck you, Bob. Fuck you. Bastard.
No, made me come across the airwaves.
Is that a live highway cam feed?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not an intentional ass. I'm just an inherent ass.
Listen, man, if it was up to me, I'd buy you your own little satellite, fuck, so you'd always come through clear. There we go. Fucking Bob 5.
Yeah, I'm checking into that. I'm gonna see if I can't get an antenna. I mean, they sell antennas that are supposed to boost the phone signal, but I'm gonna check on that.
There he goes, he's driving around in his truck with a repeater tower stuck to the thing.
That guy in front of you is really speeding.
Well, I'm doing 110 kilometers an hour right now.
What's the legal limit where you are?
Right now it's 110 or 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, I'm from Europe, so I only understand the kph. So.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately for us Americans, we're gonna like, okay, what's the conversion for that?
I'm in the military in Europe, and I've back in the day I fought between brackets United States Army when we were training for the Russian doctrine, the Russian military doctrine. And so we got around, and we occasionally got on United States military bases when we were practicing fighting and stuff over there. And I remember we went to the shops, and they had those neat little T-shirts over there. The German Autobahn. We've been there, because basically in Germany on the Autobahn. When you have some parts of the German highway system, you can drive as fast as you want. So they had this T-shirts, the German Autobahn. We've been there.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos of guys who have like cars that they want to test, that they in Europe, right? That they actually go to the Autobahn.
I got this crappy family car, a Volkswagen. Like it will only go 150 kilometers. Like I tried to go the fastest I could on the Autobahn. They're like other cars. They're looking at me weird. Like, go faster.
Doesn't the Autobahn just have a minimum speed? It's like you can't go below this speed, otherwise you're endangering people.
Well, there are parts of the
Autobahn. Most highways in Europe have a minimal speed. In my own country, the Netherlands, you have a minimal speed of 70 kilometers per hour. I'm not in Germany, and often when you have a no limited speed, you have how do you say it in English? Dividing system, that the most right lane has the minimum system, the midway has an average speed limit, and the left lane is unlimited speed. So on the right lane you would be driving 100 kilometers per hour, and on the mid lane you would be driving 100 kph per hour. And on the left lane, you could drive as fast as you fucking could. It sounds a lot of fun, but you always have to remind yourself, because you have an insurance policy on your car. The moment you make an accident above 120 kph, you're fucked, because then it's all on your cost, and the insurance company will not pay anything out. So.
Yeah, that's the one backside to it. Yeah, I heard about it as well.
But they don't tell you about that, so it's a lot of fun. So.
And it's also time limited, right? It's not in all times of the day. It's like in the morning and in the evening, I think.
No, I'm not so much. I've never encountered time limits. I can't tell you about that. But it's the moment you see. Traffic sign saying you should be driving this, you'd better be driving this, because in Germany they photograph you from the front. So.
Right. Well, hey guys, I'm gonna be going to bed. I'm gonna leave the hangout open though, so don't worry. This is gonna be like as if nothing happened. Basically, it's gonna be live. So Just behave nicely. I've left a few people
Art,
with
you didn't
mods.
put them fucking mod controls on me, did you?
I did, sir, because I hate
Oh, you bastard! You're a bastard. You're a Russian bastard. You know that? Oh, you know I hate it when you give me them mod controls.
I know, but I trust you. I don't know why, but I do trust you. So yeah,
You don't trust me. You like me. There's a big difference. You must learn the difference, Arthur. I'm not a trustworthy man. No, the things you do to me. You gotta be ashamed of yourself. Ashamed. You know I hate them mod controls.
well, luckily you don't have to probably use them because there's a lot of other people with mods, so don't worry.
Yeah.
Art, thank you for inviting me and having me.
You got Seamus here, and it's so juicy, just so tempting.
Oh wait, is Seamus still here? I thought
Is
he
he? I
left.
don't know. Is he gone? Okay.
Yeah, he already left.
Well, I don't know. Maybe there's hope
So no
yet.
temptation for you.
Okay.
There we go. So yeah, guys, I'm off to bed. I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Take care.
Sleep well.
I'm not sure. Does it mean when the initial leader of the hangout
no, I'm gonna be
leaves,
here.
we can't invite new people? Or?
Nobody can invite new people except me. I already invited everybody I could. Posted a link everywhere. We have like 5 viewers now, so don't worry, guys. Yeah, I'm gonna stay in the hangout like as if my account, so nothing's gonna change. So don't worry. Basically, go ahead as nothing happened, essentially. Right. Take care, guys.
See you, Art.
So we got a bit of a stream, and we thought that I think we initially started talking about terrorism acts of today, and we ended up talking about constitutions and things and stuff and blah 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 blah. Does anyone has something to say about it from left and the right in between those?
No, I believe I've made sufficient comment on the matter.
Yeah, I have a complaint about the road on Holland. They got cameras everywhere.
That's right. So no jerking off in your car, Pommy.
Seriously?
Hell yeah.
You have to tell me where, because the last time I being from Holland, so being a citizen of the Netherlands, the last time I had a speeding ticket was years ago. So you have to tell me where those cameras are, because over the last few years they removed all the speed cameras in the highways in the Netherlands, and a lot of the speed cameras they had standing next to the highways in the Netherlands did not have a camera in them. They only were there to scare the people driving on the highway. So you have to tell me where those cameras are, because I don't know them. So.
Well, you know how it works in Holland, eh? They don't give you a speeding ticket; they give you a smoke and a pancake, and they tell you that there's something wrong with your mind.
You know what the problem is? If you get a speeding ticket in the Netherlands, you probably were not wearing your wooden shoes on the gas pedal. That's your problem.
In downtown Ottawa, for the longest time, there used to be a cafe run by an old Dutch guy by the name of Wim Tenholder, and it was called Cafe Wim, of course, and it was the weirdest little place, I'm telling you. And that guy was strange. You Dutch people, there are things about you I do not understand.
Yeah, once we ruled the world and we lost it, and
yeah, but then you went nuts over some tulips.
And then we went liberal nuts about it.
Oh, I see. I see. Blame liberalism. You know, it's a poor craftsman that blames his tools. You know that, eh?
Well, the Netherlands is a very progressive country. A lot of other people think, but there are also a lot of people within the Netherlands that do not agree with that. Because a person like me, I come from I've been in the military for 20 years, and if they would scrap the drugs system they have in the Netherlands tomorrow, I would 100% agree with it, because drugs are bad, okay, to say it South Parkish. So
they may be, and that may be true, but I'll tell you right now, The Western world has been fighting the drug war for 60 years now, and they have never gotten ahead with it.
Exactly. That's the problem. So, no solution is perfect on things like that. So, but on other things
Well,
like
yes, no solution is perfect, but there's a difference between imperfect solutions and solutions that cause you to spend an awful lot of money you don't have on a war you'll never win.
yeah, I would want to congratulate the United States of America today that the Supreme Court finally made a very righteous decision to say that within all the 50 or 52, I'm not sure, not from America, states in America, it's basically legal for same-sex marriage. So I want to congratulate every United States person on this.
Here, here. Here, here.
We did this about 20, 25 years ago in the Netherlands. I think we were even the first country in the world that allowed it. I'm not sure. Fuck it, it's not about bragging. I think it's about fairness and respecting the people. Those are milestones, and you should remember that. I'm just hoping that it doesn't. You had this crazy pastor in the United States a few days ago that said when same-sex marriage in the United States would become legal, he would set himself on fire or something like that.
I'm telling you, man, I'll mail him a can of gasoline.
Did you buy his gasoline? You send it to him?
I would, you know. I would. Fucker, because first of all, I know he'd never do it, first of all. And second, you know, it's... it's a bit of a douchey thing to do.
Yeah, it's like all those end of times predictions was the end of the end of the earth and the end of existence is going to happen on pick a date, the 2nd of August 2005, and on the 3rd of August 2005 nothing happens. And then you never hear them about it ever again. So.
No, sir, you do not.
It's the signs of the end times. Now gays are accepted, and everything is going to hell.
Yeah, and all those extreme Christians.
They're gonna be happy because this is the sign.
No, they're not gonna. But they ignore the fact that end of times predictions have happened countless of times over the last 2 millennia. So
now I got a question on that. If they're saying that this is the sign of the end times, then wouldn't there, and that's God's will, you know, to end the world or whatever like that, wouldn't them constantly trying to fight all these laws and these things be trying to fight or stop God's will?
No. If you are a Christian, you want revelation to happen, because that's bliss for you. Because every Christian thinks that he is a perfect Christian and he deserves to end up in heaven. So every Christian thinks.
Right, but I'm saying those that try to prevent things like gay marriage and everything else because they're saying, oh, this is sign of the end times, then wouldn't you want it to happen? That, you know, that gay marriage being a sign, saying, oh yeah, let them get married. This means that the end times are coming.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
You know, aren't they kind of trying to subvert God's will when they're trying to say, oh no, we can't legalize this? And
basically, what from my perspective and from my understanding, I may get some of the things wrong. Some of these Christians think that we now live in the end times, but they wouldn't be the first persons who think so, because people thinking they lived in the end times has happened hundreds of times over the last 2 millennia, and those are historical recorded facts. Now, but negate all that, and now we have these Christians, and let's focus on the United States of America. And we have all these Christians in the United States of America who think we now live in the end times, and Japan, tsunami, earthquakes, volcano outbreak, signs of the end times, and these persons, because they think they are so sincere in their own beliefs, think they want this to happen, not realizing some of the other laws within the Bible, like there are some sexual deviation laws in the Bible that says that basically when one of your ancestors fucked things up, suppose your grandfather fucked his mate when he was married to his wife, and you are basically a result of your grandfather fucking his mate, you don't get to heaven, because it says those sins portray into history for 10 generations. So even if 9 generations ago your father fucked a mate and you are a result of that, you do not get to go to heaven. And no Christian seems to grasp those facts that when you really literally read the Bible on all the exclusion facts that make you go to heaven or not, about 99%, and that's a rough guess and a basic quick assumption to make a point.
Under what denomination? Because that's the first I've ever heard that for 10, the sins passed down for 10 generations.
I have to look it up, but it's somewhere in the Bible where it says that if one of your previous answers, if you do now, if you make a certain sin now today, that sin portrays throughout the generations for 10 generations, and throughout 10 generations time, nobody of your answers, the people that follow you, I'm not exactly sure on the English word, will not go to heaven. And that's somewhere in the Bible. I'm not sure about the quote. I have to look it up.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with any of that, but Mutt, I was listening from the outside, and I really didn't want to come back in here, but something you said was profound. You said, why would the Christians try to impede legislation, that leads to gay marriage, right? If it's a sign of the end times, and ultimately this is going to lead to God's judgment being poured out, why would we want to stop that? And I think that's a really great point, which it's part of the reason I don't vote against like gay marriage and things that are contrary to what Scripture teaches, is because not that I'm in a hurry to see God's wrath poured out on the world. However, what that does show is that Christ would return. So great point. I applaud you for bringing that up. Most Christians themselves,
hold on. What denomination are you? Just curiosity.
A Bible-believing Christian, I guess. I don't know.
So non-denominational.
Yeah, I guess.
Seamus, may I ask you the question? You applauded, and I understand it because you're a Christian, and I respect that.
Are you talking to me or Seamus?
No, Seamus. You.
Okay. Well, who?
Did I mispronounce your name? I apologize.
My name's not Seamus. You can call me Justin.
All right, Justin. All right. Sorry. So you're a Christian and you believe this, and I can respect that you believe this. So you want? I understand. As a Christian, you want basically to have revelation happening.
Well, I want Christ to return, and one of the things that happen, as the world makes its downward spiral, I'm not going to interfere with what the secular world wants to do. If they want to make these decisions and stuff like that, that's fine. Go ahead. To me, it means something greater is about to happen.
Yeah.
So I
So
don't
I,
believe that
I'm
in any way.
I'm
But I do speak against it. I don't. I'm not like out like I'm not going to be out celebrating tonight on the square with, homosexuals and
Sure.
things like that. I still
Sure.
don't obviously agree with it. But I'm not going to vote against it. And I'm not going to try to slow it down or
Of
any of
course.
that stuff. So
I can understand that. That's a logical position from your perspective. I don't know how old you are now. 25, 35, 45.
I don't know why I keep saying I'm 36.
No,
I'm
no,
30.
no, 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 no. No, I said 25, 35, 45. I have no idea how old you are. So how long are you willing to wait for that? So suppose doesn't
Well, it
matter.
doesn't necessarily mean
No, no,
that.
no, no.
Well,
Suppose
Christ is
you end up being 95 or
very.
105,
I'm sorry.
and Jesus, suppose you end up being 95 or 105, and Jesus hasn't returned at the moment you die. What would be of course you're dead. What would be your perspective on your on what you have been following all these years, being religion, Christianity? Because because my point is you're not the first person that says Jesus coming back in my lifetime. You're not the first person, and that's why I said earlier, people predicting end times. It's happened countless of times over the last 2 millennia. You're not the first person.
Right. Any
You're
prediction
one
prior to
in
1948 would have, by default, never. You could have rejected it immediately. In fact, there was a lot of Christians, specifically dispensationalists, who studied eschatology, who said that, you guys are saying Christ is going to return, but that can't happen without an Israel in place. And now that Israel is in place, the game is set, ready to go. Now, I'm not saying that I know when Christ is going to return. Do I expect it in my lifetime? Sure, that's a promise that all Christians look forward to. So, and
when Israel said so when Christians took over Jerusalem during the Crusades.
Say what?
They thought when the Christians took over Jerusalem in the Crusades, they thought, well, now it's set. They thought the same thing as you are thinking now, and the end times are coming soon.
Should have done that. If the Crusades happened while I was alive, knowing what I know of Scripture, which may not have been the case if I was alive then, I would have said, "Why are you guys doing this? I don't understand it." That's why you look at
the difference. The difference there is that that Israel is to be a country unto its own, a state unto its own. Basically, it's
right. The Jews have returned,
and during the Crusades, that's not what the Israel or the lands there were hacked up between multiple different European nations, and the kings and the noblemen through the church. The church basically gave them carte blanche to go there and take it back and do what they wanted with the land and own the land. So it was never its own nation in that respect during the Crusades.
Did the Jews have returned? Did the Jews ever left? No, the Jews never left Jerusalem and the area around it, because there were always Jews during the time. In the area of, there have always been Jews in Arabian countries, etc., etc., etc. So when you say the Jews have returned, you need to specify what you mean with the Jews have returned, and have to validate it with Scripture. So I want to know what you mean with the Jews have returned.
Well, Israel was essentially barren.
No, it wasn't.
Hold on. If you want to talk, bro, I'll let you talk, but you gotta.
All right. I listen.
Clarify. I mean.
My apologies. I listen.
Israel. The Jews were scattered, right? They were scattered. Rome comes in 70 AD and destroys the temple and Jerusalem. As a result of this, the Jews are kind of scattered into the world. They've been that way since that happened. In 1948, we see the formation of an Israeli state, and the mandate goes out for Jews all over the world to return to the nation, the state of Israel, nation of Israel, however you want to call it. Now that the Jews are back, okay, God can finish his plan. This is all prophesied to happen. Amos 9:14 and 15 specifically detail that once the Jews return, they're not ever going to be taken out of the land again. Now, the only way this prophecy's not been fulfilled is if we see like a nuke get dropped on Israel, but that'll never happen without also nuking the Muslims, and that would just create another world war regardless. So the Jews in 70 AD could not have been that generation because they were taken out of the land. So they don't fit that prophecy. The only Jews that could fit the prophecy are the ones that are currently there now. And they've built up their nation, they've got their militaries and things like that, and they're an established superpower, even given the fact that they're very small in size and stature. So can the prophecy continue? Yes, it can. And I think that you'll see a rapid decline around the world, and not just from what Christians hold to be traditional Christian values, but angst amongst the different countries and things like that, an increase in wars, and if we haven't already seen that, given the first two world wars, then things are not moving in a good direction. But at the same time, Christians imposing Christian values through legislation, it's not necessarily what we're called to do. I can't say though that if a Christian gets voted into office and wants to somehow get legislation passed on their Christian values, hey, whatever. I'm not going to get involved in secular politics and vote either way. I don't care. If the whole world wants to start moving in that direction relatively quickly, then the Christians would be smarter if they stood by and watched. Still witness the gospel, still love the people, but not interfere with how they want to run their world. Because it's their world, it's not ours. We don't consider ourselves from this world.
So okay, because of go ahead.
I was just going to ask him, have you ever been a Mennonite or looked into Mennonites?
A Mennonite? What's a Mennonite?
Yeah, they're kind of like Amish, but there's two schools of Mennonite. Basically, they have that same theory. That's their world. We're not a part of it. We live here, we work here, we.
No, I'm quoting scripture when I say that. When I say.
Right.
In the world, but not of the world.
I was raised Mennonite.
Not necessarily, yeah.
I was raised Mennonite, and that was kind of the same principle as, look, whatever they do just brings us more towards, everything brings you towards God's end and justice and whatnot.
Look at the alternative, right?
I like your principles there.
Yeah, here's the alternative. We can get all pissed off. We can go out and scream at gay people, and what's the alternative? Just make people mad, right? Like, instead of being there for them when they need us for something, we can still love them. We don't have to support it if people get in a conversation about it. We can talk about it, what we believe is sinful. But apart from that, I don't think influencing legislation is the brightest thing to do against it, unless but if you have that ability, again, I'm not going to say anything. I stay away from secular politics. If the world's going to hell in a handbag, I'm going to stand back and watch and just be there to support people if they need help. But I got to get off here, guys. I wanted to pop in and say that I don't think a lot of Christians understand what you were saying.
I just wanted to tell you one thing because I didn't get around to it. You're negating. I understand your 1984 Jerusalem, blah blah blah, State of Israel, etc., etc. But you're negating the fact that within history there have been some centuries that the Jews were not prosecuted, and they were even allowed to be in the governmental systems of those times, and they were not prosecuted, and they were liked because of the knowledge. They were allowed because of the knowledge and the knowledge they had, and etc., etc., etc. Your perspective of this is the end times because now the Jews are in Israel, basically, is not unique because it happened hundreds of years ago also several times when the Jews were allowed back in Israel, etc., because of their knowledge, etc., etc. Your occurrence is not. I know you do not agree with it, and at the moment I'm not capable of nicely articulating it because I've been drinking at this moment, and you can hear this. But it has happened in the past before, and that's with. That's the same with all these claims of revelations that we now live in the end times. The people claiming we now live in the end times. It has happened hundreds of times before that people thought they were in the end times, and it never happened. So.
Well, we're not there yet, so I'm not.
That's the point.
End times, it's stretched out over a 7-year period. So.
How far are you willing to go? How long are you willing to wait before you can say, yeah, I was wrong 3 decades ago, 4 decades ago, but now I am really sure that we are now in the end times.
Well, you're proposing a future that I'm not currently experiencing, so I'm not really there to kind of wrap my mind around it. I'm not ever going to lose my faith.
It's kind of unfair because you are predicting a future occurrence already.
Well, there will be an end regardless. If I take Floyd's perspective, then there's a naturalistic end of the world, which entropy will run its course. Or if I go by my beliefs, then the sin that man has brought on the world is going to ultimately lead to Christ.
But your perspective is from a religious one, and you have a religious perspective on it. So.
Yeah,
sure.
But
I don't deny that.
In his defense, though, he said, yeah, we're coming toward. These are signs that we're coming towards the end times and whatnot. But he's not saying that any specific time or point or how. It's very vague in its sense of, yeah, these are signs that we are going downhill and down towards this end moment, but not. I've seen nothing that he's ever said that's like, 7 years from now it's going to happen.
Yeah, I need to see a couple more events before I'm saying officially, okay, this is it. In my defense, and I made a video on my channel. I did say I warned people that war was coming to Israel last year before it happened, with the Gaza Strip, and then I have been saying, yes, we are moving towards legalizing homosexuality, but I said you're going to.
You would have to take that back a little further, though, because the war is coming to Israel. If that's a prophecy, Israel has been at war multiple.
No. That's not. No. That's not what I'm saying. I was warning about a conflict in Israel because of the blood moon, but that's something you'd have to investigate. That's too much to talk about. But as far as the homosexuality,
since it's
there's people on here that heard me because I've said it probably 50 times since I've been on G+, that this nation is going to become a homosexual nation. It's going to move towards gay marriage for everyone, everywhere.
What does it mean, a homosexual? What does it mean, a homosexual nation?
Are you saying
that to me?
Gay marriage will be widely
accepted? Gay marriage will be mandatory. That everybody will have
to.
Several people are talking, so I didn't get it.
I hope we're not mandatorily gay.
No, but seriously, it's you think your nation is going to become a homosexual nation because of scripture?
No.
So I ask you, what do you think it means
what
to
I'm saying
become a homosexual?
What I was saying was that the gay marriage was going to be legalized everywhere in the United States. It was just a matter of time.
So now it's a fact.
We're already started our descent. It's just a matter of time before we just start legalizing sin willy-nilly, and that's what we're doing. And as predicted, as what I'm expecting to happen, I'm watching things unfold relatively faster than I could have even imagined myself.
So now the United States is a homosexual nation. What is going to happen next? Tell me.
Well, God will judge this nation. I don't know how or when, but He will judge this nation. You can't.
So you will wait till you figure out something.
You can't legalize sin and
Why sin?
because now that puts God's people in a predicament because we're going to be held to a different standard by the rest of the nation. For example, if we have businesses and we don't cater to whatever homosexual needs there are, if we don't cater to that, they're going to start making legislation around that, and we're going to deny it, and then we're going to be seen as the non-progressive bigots that want to live in the first century, whatever. But it only has one in-game result where Christians will eventually be hunted down. Eventually, that will happen. The tolerance for what we believe is not compatible with the direction the world is going.
You would prefer to live in a Christian theocracy?
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. No, I'd rather be persecuted. I'd rather be
hearing
than impose Christian values on those that don't want them.
Yeah, well, it hasn't been legalized, and that's a lot of misconception there.
Right, there's going to be...
It's been deregulated. In other words, the Supreme Court has said, no, you cannot make a law outlawing this act.
Right, so every state, I think there's 36 states that have it legal now, but anybody now that challenges it can get the legislation for their state changed. It just takes a person going and saying, hey, from a state that doesn't have legal protection for gay marriage, it just takes one person taking it to Supreme Court and getting it overturned. Just a matter of time. You're seeing this in other countries as well. Things are moving along pretty quickly.
I have to ask from my moral perspective, and I get that you're a really nice guy, and so now it's happened in the United States, so it's going to happen. Will you protest it actively?
No, I will not.
Why not?
Because if they want, okay, listen, man, if people want to pass legislation for gay marriage, if gay people want to get married and have that same kind of standing, whatever, hey, I don't care. I can't do anything about it. I'm not going to stop it. Why would I get involved? What I will do, what I can do, and what's within my right is to still love them. And I think that's the important part. If they need help with something or whatever, love that person. I'm not going to.
But seriously, what stopped you loving gay persons before?
I'm sorry.
What stopped you loving gay persons?
I don't look at them like subhuman. They're human beings, no different from myself. I mean,
you just don't agree with that.
But that's
just like I don't agree with drinking.
A lot of Christians do think that gay persons are subhuman persons.
Well, they probably should go back and read their Bibles, I guess. I don't know what else to say. I look at sin. Sin is sin. I don't view a homosexual any different than a drunkard in my church. Make sense?
Yeah, I understand your person.
But hey, guys, I gotta run, man. I got food coming.
Let me say one thing. I enjoyed talking to you, and I hope we could talk because I have been drinking at this moment, and you could have heard that from my talk, blah blah blah. I want to talk to you in the future again, so I really respect your opinion. Thank you.
Okay, cool. See you guys.
Bye bye. So.
Yeah, I just think when I hear the Christians say that all the time, about because they're going to have to serve homosexuals like everybody else in the public, it's taking away something of them, something from them, their right to choose or something.
May I ask where you're from?
Oh, I was on earlier. I had my camera on. I'm from by Detroit, Michigan.
Okay, Detroit, Michigan. Okay, I'm from Europe, so I'm not exactly 100% sure where Detroit, Michigan is. How religious is Detroit, Michigan?
Michigan's in the United States. That's a state that looks like the
States.
Yeah, United States. It's right across the border from Windsor, Ontario.
Yeah. All right. North border.
Yep. Yeah, we're the Great Lakes state.
Yeah. What's your perspective on on now the United States as a whole has to accept gay marriage?
Well, it's a good thing. I mean,
May I ask why you think it's a good thing?
well, when you deny people the same liberties as someone else, there's something wrong there.
Yeah, yeah,
As long as those liberties aren't going to harm someone else.
yeah.
So two people getting married of the same sex isn't going to harm anybody else anywhere.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's fucked me up for years. That basically, I'm from Europe, from a Catholic area, and then you have the nutcake in Rome called the Pope, calling out for love each other and blah 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 blah. But all his actions do not portray love, because Roman Catholic is basically fucked up and has been for centuries. What the fuck is wrong with two people loving each other? If they have two penises of two vaginas, or a penis and a vagina, or two penises and one vagina, I never got it. What's the problem with it? It doesn't screw up the economy.
Yeah, to me, if I were to think about it, it goes back to the 113 commandments, or the laws. They were given to the Israelites at a certain time because, and the reason they didn't want gays or homosexuals is because they needed to build their numbers. They needed to increase their population. So if they just let anybody go with anybody, in their heads it was going to decrease their population, and they needed a larger population so they could spread their beliefs over a greater span and have more control.
Yeah, so you think the reason they introduced that perspective on people being gay is because back at the time they thought it would be the best possible solution to promote insight towards the oppressive Roman Empire?
Well, I mean, and the other reasons, like the Christians give, to set the God's chosen people apart. Like they're not supposed to eat shellfish. They're not supposed to wear.
Who is God's chosen people?
And I don't know, the Israelites or Jews or whoever it was back then.
They do not know that this themselves. So
yeah, honestly, I don't believe in the Bible. I think it's all bullshit. I believe there are no gods. So
yeah. I agree with you 100%. The Bible is bullshit and there are no gods. So
why is the Bible bullshit? I'm curious.
Because it's based on it was written 2,000 years ago. It has never changed its text, basically, except for language difficulties, blah blah blah, etc., etc., etc.
What's wrong with it being written 2,000 years ago?
No, you did not let me explain it all. It basically, the Bible is fixed in its intent and its text.
So because it doesn't change like science, therefore it's false?
I'm not saying that. I said the Bible text is fixed and it's set. What do you think it means? You think a Bible text is dynamic?
No, I agree with you. It's fixed and it's set. I'll use your words. I agree.
So the Bible is not dynamic. What and it's been written. Well, some people say 2,000 years. So let's say 1,800 years ago, Emperor Constantine, a Roman emperor, who had to figure out from shit. I have to figure out how I can control my whole empire. Hey, shit, he thought to himself, the best way to control my whole empire is to have them all believe in one religion. So he came up with the first Concilia of Nicaea. Voila, Catholicism and the rest followed.
That's hilarious because Christianity was around way, way, way before the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea was at 325 and 326.
Of course. But we are talking about the Roman Catholic Church. The first Council of Nicaea was around, I don't know,
325 to 326.
Exactly. So you had a lot of Christians before that.
Well, Christianity was firmly established textually, Christianity is firmly established in 50 AD. That would be... hold on. I'm not done.
Yeah, right.
So, textually, Christianity is established in 50 AD, which would be some 17 years after the death of Christ, which is firmly established in the Pauline epistles. Like, for example, the earliest epistle would be like Galatians, which would be dated to like 51 or 52, which would be, like 17, 18 years after the death of Christ, which is usually dated like at 33 or 32 AD. So, regardless of what you heard on Da Vinci Code about the Council of Nicaea...
Da Vinci Code, heresy. You just seriously insulted me. I'm Da Vinci Code, seriously.
That's kind of what it sounded like, though. I didn't mean to insult you, although I know that
you
that
just
was
really insulted me. You think you think my reasoning is based on the Da Vinci Code? Seriously?
Okay, I realize that was
fuck
insulting.
yourself. Seriously.
Let's calm down and.
Was that not what it sounded like, though, where it said about 325?
You did not leave me any area to speak my mind, so.
Well, here, you can speak your mind.
Da Vinci Code, seriously, a fantasy written topic, and you think that is my basis of my atheism? Seriously, go.
I did not say that, man. I did not say that.
I
Let's just calm down for a second.
That's what it sounds.
Let's take it back a second and calm down. I did not say that.
The primary thing that I think Seamus is getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of goes back to the letters to the churches. That is, when Paul was sending out the letters to the churches. The churches, the Christian religion was, or the religion following Christ was established there through both the churches and the groups that were established multiple different places as these churches, and Paul sending out those letters and basically telling them, hey, this is how you should follow Christ. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'd always understood.
No, that's precisely my argument. That the
letters,
the Pauline epistles, which originate about less than 20 years after the death of Christ, around 50 AD, were already written to establish churches talking about certain doctrines that they should adhere to and certain stuff. So Christianity was already firmly established some 300 years before the Council of Nicaea. Almost 300 years before the Council of Nicaea. So I don't really see the Council of Nicaea or Constantine playing any role in, like, voila, therefore Catholicism was created and so on and so forth.
How many religious texts from I'm willing to accept that Jesus isn't a historical person because of my experience from history overall. I'm willing to accept that Jesus isn't a historical person. I'm not willing to accept the Roman Catholic perception of it.
What Roman Catholic perception?
What?
What Roman Catholic perception are you not willing to accept?
Modern Roman Catholic perception, because it is solely based most of Roman Catholicism is based on the First Council of Nicaea, point blank. It's a shotgun occurrence. It's one of the reasons why people in the medieval ages started rising up and why Protestantism started rising up, because they thought, well, in the first few centuries they really fucked it up, and it was only about power and not about religion.
Well, first of all, okay, I can understand the kind of the roots of the clash with Protestantism, which happened like 1,500 years later. I guess is kind of buried in the origins of Catholicism. But so let's kind of go back and rewind. The Council of Nicaea was a council that was just to establish one thing in the Christian doctrine. Like, I've heard some people, and I know you haven't said this, so I'm not accusing you of this, but I've heard some people in the past say, oh, the Council of Nicaea was to establish canon, like which were the books in the Bible. The Council of Nicaea was actually not to establish canon, it was to establish one doctrinal issue, and that was Jesus Christ
What's the
deity?
difference? What's the difference between what is the difference between written language canon and what you should say towards the people that follow the religion? There is no fucking difference. The fact is that during the First Council of Nicaea, a lot of religious texts that were common at that time were cast out as being bullshit. But now every religious person, whether Protestant or Catholic, is following basically the doctrines and the religions they established during the First Council of Nicaea. And a lot of knowledge prior to the First Council of Nicaea has been lost because they
incorrect.
did not promote it at that time.
First of all, some of that you said was incorrect. So let me explain what the First Council of Nicaea was to establish. The First Council of Nicaea was not to establish canon, was not to establish many doctrinal issues. The First Council of Nicaea. Hold on. Let me talk for a few minutes here.
Right.
Let me just kind of get this out. So the First Council of Nicaea was to establish the deity of Christ. Is Christ God? Okay, and the way that it was put forth is Christ the same essence of God, or is he of different essence than God? That was the question. Okay, that was the sole single question.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is not about canon. It's not about anything in doctrine except for one sole issue: is Jesus Christ God? Now, the thing about it is the deity of Christ. Even though it was voted on in the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, the deity of Christ was firmly established well into the early 1st century, right around 55 to 70 AD. 55 being the book to Philippians, the epistle to the Philippians, which firmly establishes the deity of Christ, which I can paraphrase because I know almost by heart as a Christian. It says, who in the very form of God did not consider his equality with God something to be held on to. Instead, he humbled himself to the point of death, even the death on a cross. So what it says is, even in the very form of God, he did not consider equality with God. That's called the Philippians chapter 2, which is dated to 55 AD. Then you go on to the Gospel of Mark, where there's many references to the deity of Christ. For example, where Jesus Christ forgives sin, okay, and when he says, is it easier to say your sins are forgiven or pick up your mat and walk away? All the Jews accuse him of blasphemy, obviously, because only God can forgive sin. There's then the famous I am that I am is how God pronounced himself to Moses. When he said, what is your name? He said, I am that I am. Okay, and Jesus said the same thing. Before Abraham was, I am. And then when questioned by the Pharisee at the very end, the head Pharisee, he says, are you the Son of the Blessed One? He said, I am, and they crucified him for blasphemy, for making himself equal with God. So the deity of Christ, which was voted on in the Council of Nicaea 325 AD, was firmly established in 50 to 70 AD, some 20 to 36 years after the death of Christ.
So later, So later, both Catholic and Protestant canon is based on the First Council of Nicaea. What is different?
No. Council of Nicaea had nothing to do with canon at all.
Really?
In
Why
fact,
not?
I just told you.
You
I'll
didn't.
even link. Yes, I did. The only thing the Council of Nicaea had to do with was the deity of Christ, which means is Christ God. The question, as it was put in that time, was is Christ of the same essence of God or not? I'll actually post the article stub and citation. 1 second. I'll show you it had nothing to do with canon.
Post them, sure.
Seamus is right.
Hmm?
Seamus is right. First Council of Nicaea didn't have anything to do with canon. But basically, it was a dispute of Arianism versus Trinitarianism. Arius was a Christian who believed that Jesus was subordinate to Yahweh, to God the Father, and where the Trinitarianism, they believe Jesus was on the same level as the Father. So that was the big dispute. But yeah, it didn't form any canon then.
No,
So it was the argument of whether or not the Trinity was a separate thing, or the Trinity was representation of multiple representations of God, right? Because I've heard that before.
Well, yeah,
that's modalism.
Modalism. That's another heresy.
Multiple representations would be modalism. It would say God manifesting Himself in 3 different modes, so that would be modalism, which is actually contrary to Christianity. Because the Christian doctrine of the Trinity is actually pretty hard to understand, but it's distinct from modalism in the fact that, here's the Trinity is usually described. It's saying that it's one person, one being that
three persons and one being.
Right, one being that in 3 persons, one being. Yeah. But the modalism is one being that manifests himself in 3 persons.
It's just a fucking coincidence.
Yeah, like people say, think of
first figured out it would be a nice idea to basically go ahead with Christianity and rule the world. Yeah, right.
Yeah, you hear some Christians today saying, think of water. Water can be steam, liquid, or solid ice, and that's that's heresy. That's modalism.
Constantine was not at all interested in being in power of the Roman Empire. He was just only interested in promoting Christianity.
It still wouldn't matter if that was true, which it does have truth to that. But despite there being some truth to that, that doesn't mean that Constantine started Christianity or Christianity wasn't firmly established. Constantine was just kind of riding the wave of something he thought maybe he could utilize as a control mechanism.
Made Christianity.
No, that is no, sir. Like I just said, Christianity is firmly textually established in the very middle of the 1st century. This is well before Constantine was ever alive, and the early epistles of Paul even are firmly established that Christianity, not so much Jesus, but firmly established as Christianity was around 50, 55 AD. And that's for certain in the epistles. So, and this is 300 years before Constantine. If
you want to look at Christianity as its formation, to get as bare bones basic as possible, Christianity formed with Christ and the apostles. That is where the basis of it is, and being an offshoot from Judaism. And then the following of Christ expanded through the teaching and works of the apostles after the death of Christ. So really, Christianity following Christ really starts with them. Yeah.
I was AFK. I don't know if anybody was just speaking, but I have another interesting thing to note. I'll post it in a second, the reference, but even though we've kind of established that, okay, the Council of Nicaea didn't have anything to do with canon, and that's 325 AD, there's actually a 2nd century source that lists 22 of the 27 New Testament books, and that's in the 2nd century. So it kind of shows you that canon it was pretty firmly established, well, in the 2nd century, or at least in the very early 3rd century, without a shadow of a doubt. Give me 1 second, and I'll kind of show you that source.
Yes, one of the church fathers offered a list which is very, very close to our current canon, but doesn't mean it was established. That just means that eventually, people went in that direction.
Well, yeah, it doesn't mean that it absolutely was established then. It absolutely was. It was only 22 of the 27 books that he mentioned, but and it was written by a church father, which helps give it some credence that within the church there was this movement to accept at least these 22 books. So, but what I'm trying to say is, I'm not trying to say this is proof positive, but what I'm trying to say is this is definitely some firm evidence that the canon as we see it was coming into formation and being solidified before Nicaea, and everyone knows Nicaea, we actually have the Codex Vaticanus and the Codex Sinaiticus, which are actually just a little bit after the Council of Nicaea, and these are complete biblical manuscripts of all 27 books. So, it's a really hard thing to push forward some of the argumentation I've heard thus far.
Guess who?
I apologize. I was just AFK for a bit. PP bis. What did I miss?
You look nice today.
Thank you.
You like popsicles?
Sure.
Come on over here, son.
I don't think so.
But I can't wash myself. I know what boys like. I know what guys want. I know what boys like. Boys like. Boys like me.
That's like a good little intermission, I guess. I guess that's what we need. Here it is. It's called the Muratorian Fragment. Here, I'll post the Wikipedia of it.
What is that?
Okay, the Muratorian Fragment is a piece of document that we have that dates from about 190 AD. This would be about 120 years before the Council of Nicaea, which, like I said, didn't have anything to do with canon. And so this was around 190 AD, and this was a canon list that contained 22 of the 27 New Testament books in the current canon. So it shows you that the solidification of the canon was already firmly established at the end of the 2nd century, and we have complete manuscripts of Christian text, of the complete Bible manuscripts of every single book in order from the late 4th century, which would be just slightly after the Council of Nicaea. So I've just shown you canon was well put in place 100 years before the Council of Nicaea, which didn't have anything to do with canon.
Canon, fuck off, people. Alright. So, what was the conclusion?
The conclusion is this, that Constantine did not start Christianity. Christianity was founded and well into motion as a movement some 300 years slightly before 300 years before Constantine was ever on the scene. It shows that the New Testament canon was not decided in Council of Nicaea. In fact, it was solidified well before that, with the information being the Muratorian fragment that I've listed below. And the last thing is that, I don't know, that's it, I guess.
No, I wouldn't say it was solidified.
Well, I wouldn't say completely solidified, but it was obviously solidified before Nicaea because we have Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Vaticanus that are only just slightly older than the Council of Nicaea, and those are complete manuscripts. So it kind of shows that.
Yeah, but they have other books than just our canon, though.
Oh, certainly, but they have at least our canon, which is all I'm trying to establish.
Yeah, but you can't say that the canon was solidified when when it was still disputed. I mean, it was getting. I mean,
well, the canon's still disputed today.
Well,
listen, the canon's still disputed today. So depending on how you choose to interpret that, Floyd, you can make any conclusion you want. You can say, "Well, fuck the canon; it's still being in dispute today." Well, certainly.
Yeah, fuck the canon.
I mean, it's safe to say that they decided, like the four Gospels, for example. We could say that that was pretty set. I don't think anyone would dispute that. No one was debating whether the Thomas Gospel should be in there, things like that.
Fuck the canon. Oops, Jesus' righteousness. Yeah, right.
Things like that.
Like a fuck the canon. Oops, Jesus' righteousness. Yeah, right.
Well, that didn't go over quite so well, but he had some pretty weak criticisms of Christianity. Sorry, I just said that didn't seem to go so well. He seemed to have some pretty weak criticisms of Christianity, and they seemed to be pretty easily rebutted, and then he really didn't seem to like those conclusions and kind of just didn't really want to speak too much after that.
In his defense, he had already said he was drinking, and so, I'm sure he was rather muddled.
Yeah.
Clearer head, he may have done better.
But yeah, I can't tell you how many people think that the canon was created in the Council of Nicaea. I mean, I hear that mistake over and over and over again.
Well, I think, and I hate to, but Seamus was kind of right. I think he just took a bad position on the way he had said it, and pissed him off with that. Was that a lot of people get it from the whole Da Vinci Code thing. It's kind of popular myth now.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it at all until I started coming to the Hangouts, and then people started to talk about it, and I've learned more. Mainly because they show evidence. So here's the documentation. Here's the research that has been done.
Yeah, but when you say, you get that from the Da Vinci Code, it's kind of condescending,
But I wasn't really trying to be condescending, although I realized it kind of was. But the key, all the hallmarks were there. He was saying, the Council of Nicaea, kind of started Christianity, and Constantine kind of rolled it all into motion, and on the Council of Nicaea decided canon, and it was all it just kind of all had the hallmarks of that kind of Da Vinci Code-esque argument where that early Christianity really. There is no early Christianity. It was just a movement started by Constantine and forged later on in the Catholic Church. And these early biblical manuscripts that textual scholars look at are just forgeries and bullshit. No one can take the scholarship seriously. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to be insulting when I say Da Vinci Code, but that's just what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, I think it just should have been presented. If you'd been not intoxicated. And if you'd presented more as, no, this is a cultural myth brought about by a lot of people presenting stuff based off of their thinking that the Da Vinci Code is real and whatnot. Like I said, because it's evident, it's fully evident within the Bible through the letters to the churches that it was there were it says the letters to the churches, he's writing to these churches, that it was obvious that there were already organizations around the area. I'm not sure where all of them were, but that were established followers of Christ and the Christian religion.
Yeah, exactly. There were people being martyred in Christianity before Constantine came on the scene. Like Justin Martyr, for example. I mean, he died in 150, 160. I mean, my dating could be a little bit off there, but it was definitely pre.
You just have to look at the historical record of Rome as well. Rome was pretty meticulous with their record keeping, and there are plenty of historical records of them throwing Christians to the lions, killing them, executing them, and everything, because it was considered a revolutionary movement against Rome.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of the secular historical scholarship that's used to verify the historicity of Christ, which is often refuted, a lot of those sources, even if you don't allow them to establish the historicity of Christ, 90% of those sources could establish the movement of Christianity, and it being very, very early. So not only do you have the epistles, you have secular historical sources by around 10 or 11 or so sources that can firmly establish the movement of Christianity. So it's locked and loaded.
Oops. I don't.
That's why I keep the door to my office closed.
Seamus, how far do you take your doctrine of inerrancy? I mean, you take it to the extreme?
Basically, yeah. I'm pretty far to the right when that thing is considered.
I mean, don't you acknowledge there's numerical errors in our English versions? Like the Old Testament, Chronicles will say this king became king when he was 8, and then Chronicles will then say he was 18 when he became king. I can pull up verses if you want, but it's just just numerical contradictions like that.
I wouldn't necessarily cite it as a contradiction. I would, like I said, I would put it in the line of it being a discrepancy. There's a difference there. Like I said, there's a difference between even a lot of the gospel accounts, what color was the cloak that Jesus wore in the Passion, or how many women went to the tomb, or how many angels were there, and blah 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 blah. Which a lot of those can be kind of simply explained away by blah blah blah. omission or this and that. But the one that you bring up now, which the two different numbers,
I mean,
there's a difference in it for certain. But I wouldn't go as far as contradiction.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, on something
one
that,
says
that
8, one
level,
says not 8.
18. Well, on that level with 8 and 18, because a lot of the stuff was hand transcribed one over and oral tradition. I wouldn't feel remiss to chalk that up to typo that got carried over. Somebody forgot to put the 1 kind of deal, or somebody misunderstood or misinterpreted what was being transcribed over.
Well,
I mean, it's not impossible.
Possibility. It's
I mean,
one possibility.
When you have something so similar there as 8 and 18.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that argument.
But it could be a copyist error, or the other one said, "Oh no, it shouldn't have been 8; it should have been 18." But still, it's still a contradiction. If you want to get, that's what I'm saying. How extreme you want to take it? I mean, I'm being like really nitpicky now, and who cares if the numbers, is it really a big deal if the numbers off? I don't think it's a big deal. It says nothing about the gospel or anything like that. But if you hold to a real strict version of the the doctrine of inerrancy, then it could be an issue to you.
It would only be an issue in as far as, like I was talking about that Mike Lacona guy the other night and how he said that, like, at the worst case scenario, let's grant that there are contradictions in the Bible. Let's just kind of grant it for the sake of discussion. He said it doesn't disprove Christianity, it just disproves biblical inerrancy. And I think that at the end of the day, even the contradictions, which I guess some atheists would think like, oh, the contradictions like the Holy Grail. If we can prove a contradiction to a Christian, then they must not believe. But that is purely can't be true, because even if contradictions are in the Bible, it wouldn't mean that God wouldn't exist. It would just mean that obviously that this wasn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I think even the more idiotic YouTube atheists, I think, probably realize that they're not trying to disprove Christianity by showing contradictions in the Bible. They're generally trying to open up fundamentalists who will sit here and claim that there's absolutely no contradictions in the Bible and it's completely inerrant. To loosen up a little bit and realize that, sure, Christianity could be true. You could still hold on to that and realize that the Bible is still a book that was written by people who had the scripture revealed to them or was inspired and then was copied by humans over and over again, so there might be some mistakes. I mean, that's a more moderate position that I think Christians should be able to hold.
You could justify it even more in front of the copying. Like, you could just say that, like some people would say, like, look, these events did happen. Jesus was the Son of God, and Jesus did do these miracles. And the people that were witnesses and gave testimony to these acts are being faithful and honest in their recounting, but due to their fallibility, there's going to be conflicting areas and stories due to the fact that it wasn't divinely inspired, but they were faithfully recounting true events, and Jesus Christ is God. They wouldn't even say it was due to a copyist error. They would just say it's just the authors of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were doing their best to recount actual events that they knew were the truth, but they weren't guided by God, and you're going to see all the hallmarks of fallibility in humans when they give multiple testimonies of the same event. They're always going to be things that are not the exact same. So that's kind of what they would hold to.
Yeah, I mean,
I was saying, you're bound to have typos that carry on.
I bring up contradictions, but you're right. I mean, it doesn't disprove the existence of God or even necessarily the general tenets of Christianity, but it just shows that the Bible isn't as reliable as a lot of evangelicals claim, and the historical reliability of the Bible is in question. You can't say it's perfectly
just because the Bible isn't inerrant. Well, hold on. Just because the Bible isn't inerrant doesn't mean it's not a reliable source. So we could prove, like, look, there are errors in the Bible, but or differences in story, but it doesn't mean that it's not a reliable source. So for example, like if you go to court, if you go to court and you get like multiple eyewitnesses that like supposedly seen a murder, right? They might have two contradicting stories in some of the small events, but some of the main things that were right were enough to convict the person. So just for the fact that people had two differing stories in some respects, their testimonies can still be harmonized to find out some things were for certain true. So I wouldn't see any problem there. So they would still, you could still certainly recall them as reliable, even though they aren't certainly perfect. Because no human testimony, especially the more people you add, the more discrepancies there's going to be. So no human testimony is going to be perfect in its recounting, because we don't have, most people don't have this perfect eidetic memories. So you're going to see the hallmark traits of human fallibility and consciousness that we just can't remember perfectly. And even though we can nail the hallmarks of the major events, we may get some of the peripheral stuff fuzzy or this and that and whatever. I don't see.
Yeah, well, that's where that's where I say, yeah, that it's written by man and not by God, because if God was writing through man, he would be able to tell them one story and they would be able to get the same story. Yeah, they might be changed little tiny things like, how to spell a word or whatever, but they wouldn't change and leave things out, because it's one person telling each person the story. And if he's not changing, he's not going to change his story as it goes along.
Things can be left out due to the copying of the Bible. Like, for example, there's this one famous case. It's got a special name in Hebrew, but I can't remember what it was, because it's been a couple weeks since I was looking at this. But what it basically has to do is, okay, say you have you're a copyist, like a scribe, and you're copying over the New Testament. What happens is, if there's two, okay, say you have one sentence above and one sentence below, but the words in this sentence have, two words in those sentences have the same ending. So when he hits the ending of the first sentence, he looks down and skips a line, sees the same ending on the sentence below it, and then starts there. So all that's in between those two letters that are the endings that are the same gets skipped out. And you'll see this most predominantly with I think it's John 4:3. I could be wrong, but it's before the chapter 5 in John that you see one of these very, very famous, and it has a certain name to it, where it's actually been scribed out due to the same endings of the same words, or one line below each other on the manuscript. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so that's where I get my idea that the Bible's bullshit. Because, I mean, yeah, on a whole, for the idea of it, when you read it, you get like a certain, idea of how maybe people should live. But when you get these little discrepancies and things left out and things added and things mistranslated, you don't know exactly which commandment was originally from God and which one wasn't, which one they changed a little bit, So it's for me to take it as an absolute truth and every word is supposed to be, and even you say there's stuff that's left out and translated wrong and that, then it can't be every word. So every commandment, it can't be every commandment is is an absolute. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but that's a product of human fallibility and copying, right? So, this is something that you'll see often. And the Christianity has one of the largest manuscript libraries of something of that age, of an ancient text. And the reason why it has such a large manuscript library is because it was literally copied and copied and copied, even by nightfall and by candles, by scribes, and then spread like wildfire throughout the ancient world. And it just allowed for so many copies to just be dispersed all over. That's why. And the problem is, when you have more copies, and the transmission back then, you got to understand that the printing press wasn't even invented until the 1400s, 1600s, somewhere around there, 1500s, I think. And so what happens is the early transmission of most of the Bible is all handwritten. And when you see the more manuscripts, so if you only have like one or two manuscripts, or if you only have one manuscript, there's no variance. Two manuscripts, you could have some variants, but the more manuscripts you have, the more possible variants you have. When you notice that the transmission is actual written scribal transmission, which is often done by candlelight at night, in the heat with mosquitoes biting you and stuff like this, with hiding from persecution or whatever. I mean, these people were under a lot of pressure, and obviously they're fallible humans, so you're going to see this widespread copying and a crap load of mistakes. But what you do see within these mistakes is that the vast majority of textual variants, which a textual variant could be anywhere from a punctuation or a certain aspect of the text just being one word being left out, or one letter being left out. Actually, the vast majority of those are in the later manuscripts. So the very bulk of the textual variants are really don't even have any bearing on the actual manuscript line. But there are don't let me mislead you and say there's no manuscript variants very, very early. There are some variants that are very, very early that do impact the textual line, but by and far the rule of thumb is most don't.
Well, yeah, but then we go again with it's supposed to be the inerrant word of God. God, it kind of reminds me when they're carrying the Ark of the Covenant and it goes to fall. The guy goes to grab it to save it, right? And he gets fried. Okay, so he did something that he wasn't supposed to do. He was just supposed to carry. He wasn't supposed to do anything else. Well, if these guys are just supposed to write what God wants them to write, and then they don't write what God wants them to write, you see what I'm saying?
I think it would. I kind of see what you're saying, but it would only be the case of so I pick up a Christian Bible, right, and I open it up, and I go to change one of the endings of one of the words, and as soon as I do, a lightning bolt zaps my finger. Or as soon as I try to put pen to paper, the book closes. There would have to be some type of supernatural intervention amongst free will in order for you to not tamper with the Bible. So because you see that people have free will and the ability and to do these things, and there's no tangible God stopping you from doing so, zapping it out of your fingers, you'll see things like this. And anyone can pick up a book, and pen and ink is cheap. And you can come up and...
Well, why doesn't your God do that?
But I just said the guy had free will to say that, to try and stop the Ark of the Covenant, he got fried. But then
exactly.
They're not going to do it if they're changing the words in his book?
Yeah, I don't know where you get the idea that the Christian God cares about people's free will. I mean, he's constantly intervening. He doesn't care about people's free will. He could give us free will, but he doesn't respect it. There's no, we see plenty of examples in the Bible where he intervenes, and then that was a perfect one. God just wanted to keep the Ark of the Covenant from falling on the ground, from getting broken or dirty or whatever, and because he's ritually impure, Yahweh zaps him in the spot and kills him.
Yeah.
So God could have written the Bible on gold plates like the Book of Mormon, or carved them into a side of a mountain. If you really wanted to do it, or written it in the stars.
Well.
So I agree that God does intervene. I agree that in all the instances in the Old Testament, I don't disagree with that. I would say the conversation would just completely change if we started about, does God value free will? So it's probably not best we necessarily go down that route. But what I would say is what we can clearly see is that God is not zapping people's fingers for changing the Old Testament or anything like this. And think about that. Anytime a scribe, let's say that this does hold true. Let's just be, I'm not trying to be harsh on you, but I'm saying let's take for granted that he was going to hold this every single time. That if you manipulated the Christian scriptures, your hands get zapped. Anytime a scribe was to just make an honest mistake, boom, he's dead, or boom, this happens, or boom, that happens.
Well,
I'm not done making my point. What you see if that were to happen, if scribes were killed or this would happen when they made a certain mistake, this would impede the transmission and flow of the New Testament.
Right, because the Holy Spirit is incapable of interpreting an honest mistake and informing the person writing it down that he's doing something incorrect, versus somebody who's maliciously trying to change the text and zapping them. Right? The Holy Spirit couldn't do that, right?
Yeah, or a God. Well, hang on. Or a God that can change water to. I know. Hang on a second. Or a God that can change water to wine. Couldn't, after the scribe put the paper away, change it to the correct letter? Nobody would know the difference.
That's another good point.
No, what I'm saying is obviously God could do that, but obviously God could do many other things. God could just hold on. Why do I keep getting? God could just make everyone go instantly into heaven. I mean, God could, as an omnipotent being, do many things. So I'm as a human of free will could do many things too. I could get up off my butt and go get some McDonald's right now, or I could sit here and just keep talking to you guys. Yeah, I could do many things. What's the succinct point that's being made?
I think your name made a really good point here. I mean, how much more obvious and undeniable would it be that God exists if every time somebody tried to change a Bible, the words just wouldn't change?
That's if God chose to do that. That's if God chose to reveal His existence.
Right. I understand. I understand you're saying that God doesn't choose to do that. That's fine. What I'm asking is, if God is primarily concerned with humans coming to know and enjoy Him, and that would be so much more obvious that God exists, why wouldn't God do that?
No, that's not what God's worried about. God's worried about you having faith in accepting Jesus Christ. He's not worried about proving Himself to you or anything like that. If He wanted to prove Himself to you, He could do it, and that would be a pretty decent example. He's not concerned with that. His main concern is you having faith in His Son, Jesus Christ.
You don't think more people would have faith in Jesus Christ if every time they tried to change the words of Jesus Christ, they would refuse?
That wouldn't be an article of faith, right? That would be some pretty convincing. That'd be some pretty convincing proof in my book. It doesn't seem to really have faith involved. It just seems like, well, every time I try to change the Bible, some supernatural thing happens, and this never happens in any other occurrence in life except for when you fuck with the Christian Bible. Therefore, it's pretty likely to assume that the Christian God does exist. Therefore, I don't need to have faith. I can just run a pretty strong deductive argument that the Christian God exists due to this fact.
Not really. Well, no, that's certainly not a deductive argument that God exists. How do you go from? I mean, I think it would be very convincing. But how do you get from you can't change these words to God exists deductively?
You know, we're told that we already know God exists, so going this extra step would just be icing on the cake. It wouldn't make a difference. You know, Christians constantly say, "Oh, well, we have all the evidence we need already." You know, you already know. So why hide it anymore? It's like it's a game of hide the ball.
I don't know what exactly you're getting at. I don't know if that was like a
Romans
little rabbit
1.
hole or.
Yeah, Romans
no,
1.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about Romans 1:20, but it seemed like a kind of a rabbit hole, kind of.
Well, you know, since everyone already knows, you know, why make it any harder?
Okay, I was just talking about that if in the context of biblical textual variants and the context of that not being so in a convincing proof of God's existence, that being the status quo would have a nullifying effect on the faith being the primary method of which God's people is chosen. So I think that's probably the one argument I could give for why God hasn't done it that way, and why his primary concern is not proving to you his existence.
Well, it's not about proof. For me, I don't see it to be about proof. I see it to be about just bringing people to freely come to know and enjoy him, or to accept the sacrifice of Jesus Christ for their salvation, one or the other. And I don't see, I mean, faith would be important, right, if in a world where God wanted to be mysterious, but why would God want to be mysterious if the primary concern of making humans is so they can know and enjoy him, which seems to be the underlying premise of theism and especially Christianity.
But that's what I'm telling you it's not. I'm telling you that's not the underlying premise of Christianity.
Right, well, that's what I'm getting to. But you're saying, again, this is really weird because I find you to be one of the more intellectual Christian theists around here, yet usually the intellectual Christian theists don't use faith in the way that you're insisting what it means here, which is believing things without good reason.
That's the Aaron Ra definition of faith.
I know
thank
it is.
you for that.
I know it is, and that's not what I'm not
the classical definition of faith.
I'm not saying that's what faith is, but that's exactly what you're saying it is when you're saying, oh, God can make it not obvious, but God could make it more clear that he exists and he wants us to know and enjoy him, but he doesn't, and he wants you to believe anyways. That's what you're saying. You're using the Aaron Ra definition of faith here.
No, I'm not. The Aaron Ra definition of faith is something that's believed without any reason and in the face of all reason. So I think that's a ludicrous and rude definition because I have many reasons, many justifications for Christianity, and I think that Aaron Ross saying that it's absolutely no reasons in the face of all reason. That's ridiculous.
Hold on. Why is it important to have good reasons to accept Christianity? You just said that. I just asked you, why doesn't God give us this good reason?
There are good reasons for Christianity because there are good reasons for Christianity. There doesn't need to be. There just are.
I just asked you why God wouldn't give us this really good reason to believe, and your response was, well, He wants us to believe without good reasons. That's what you said, in not so many words.
Yeah, in not so many words, that's exactly what I said.
Which is basically a kind of a weaker version of what Aaron Ross says about faith, right? Faith is believing without good reason.
No, Aaron Ross, that's only the very first part of Aaron Ross' definition. I could definitely point you to where he says this multiple times. Faith is the believing without good reason and in spite of reason. So he's saying that it's not only is it without good reason, it's in spite of good reasoning.
I'm not the one who brought up Aaron Ross. I'm not really concerned with.
Well, I don't know. You just flung out
that you're using a fully coherent, version of Aaron Ross' definition of faith. My primary point is that you're using faith in in a way that I wouldn't expect somebody like you to use faith, believing in things without good reason.
Well, okay, so that's what you define faith as. That's not how I define faith.
That's not how I define faith. I kind of like William Lane Craig's version of faith, right? Faith is more of a trust kind of thing, but that's not what.
Well, faith is defined in the Bible, actually.
I understand how faith is defined. I don't care how faith is defined. The only thing I'm pointing out here is that this happens a lot, right? I like the other definition of faith. I like faith to be more of a trust thing, and I'm okay with that definition. I'm more of a William Lane Craig fan when it comes to the definition of faith. Yet, so many times I see intellectual Christians come on here and want to defend that version of the word faith, and then they use more of an Aaron Ross type of definition of just pretending to believe things that you couldn't possibly know, pretending to know things you couldn't know, or believing things without good reason, which is exactly what you defended here when you said, no, God, hold on. When I said, hey, there's this good reason that we could have to believe, and God doesn't do this, and you said, no, God is primarily concerned with us believing without that good reason.
But you got to understand that my view is because I'm a biblically consistent Christian. So there's a verse in the Bible that says, you are saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. Okay, so it's this element of faith, how and why you are saved. Okay, you're saved by grace through your faith in Jesus Christ, and so that is the primary vehicle for Christ. I mean, not Christ, but for God pulling His people to Him. We know that the Christian scriptures say that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. And so that means that the only way to be saved is through Jesus Christ, and the only way to be saved by Jesus Christ is through faith. So I'm just being consistent with the Bible and saying that he seems to have engineered this in a way, because he could have engineered it in any other way, but he chose to engineer it in this way, in which the declaring factor of salvation is faith in Jesus Christ. So why would he have not made it so that anytime someone tries to go through a text and alter it, that they would get zapped? Is because that would be, especially to the verificationist, which is oftentimes what the form of person will run into in the atheist camp, to the verificationist, that would be a pretty solid proof of God's existence. And then this article of saved by grace through faith, you wouldn't be saved through your faith. You would be saved by the proof that it's very, very certain, or a certitude, that the Christian God exists, because this supernatural events are always taking place only when you mess with the Christian scriptures.
All right. So we're running around in circles here. So I guess to close out what I was saying, I'm just going to say that I think I've made my point. I don't think anything you've just said really addresses my point, and I've made my point. I'm going to go take a shower and get ready for work.
Okay.
But I'm going to be hanging out. I'll be listening in and out.
Yeah, and like I said, it doesn't have to be anything so profound that somebody has to get zapped either. It's just that after somebody changes the words change back.
I think I think the major issue is, and how do I'm not really.
Why even have humans do it? Well, you should. God should print it itself.
Well, yeah. I mean, why would you? If you are trying to communicate something to people, not only a mass amount of people at one time, but throughout time, why would you allow something to become so convoluted and so many discrepancies or errors, in its transcription and as it's being created down the years? Why would you allow it to have so many issues? Because then it starts to lose its meaning, its message. I mean, you can why it to death all you like, but it just does not seem to make sense why you would allow it to happen. You would put some sort of checks and balances in there somewhere.
Or even not allow the originals to get lost. They have the originals. I mean, he controls the earth. You can have the originals kept away somewhere that somebody can find them, and they're not damaged or pieces or fragments. They're all there. I mean, so.
But they did, Bob. Haven't you heard of Mormonism? They found the stone tablets. Yeah, not tablets, sorry. Oh. Yeah, praise Joseph Smith.
Yeah, they're just, like I said, that's why I think the Bible's bullshit. There's just so many. And the other thing that I can't understand is like the Tower of Babel. Here's his people trying to reach him. They want to, get to him. They believe in him. So he changes their will by changing their languages and their nationalities, spreads them over the world, and then for some reason they're so pissed at him they choose different gods. I think they would be more afraid of them and still believe in them. They wouldn't make up new gods. Because hell, if they already changed their language and their appearance, that would be one hell of a reason to believe in a god. And you think you'd have the same religion throughout the world.
In Islam, they say it's because of pride. Why God destroyed the Tower of Babel was because they became too proud, and that's why.
Well, that's the explanation for the differences of languages. But even at that time, the majority of religious belief was oral tradition. So why were they not passed on in all these other different languages? It's why do the Amazonian or the Incans and the Mayans and all that, why do they not have the exact same God or anything even remotely resembling the Christian God?
I kind of want to. I don't have anything to respond to Mutt's point there, but I do have something to respond to what the quote Void put in here. It's kind of interesting that Bart Ehrman actually has another quote that actually vastly contradicts the statement here, to a point where he was on it's on YouTube, I'll pull it up in a second. He was on a radio show, right, on an atheist radio show, and they were asking him about textual variants and stuff like that, some textual criticism, and they said, they asked Bart Ehrman, what does he think that the original manuscript's message, what does he think the message was contained in the original manuscripts compared to what we have? And he looked at the atheist guy on the radio show and said pretty much the same thing we have now. And the guy just stopped, completely dead in his tracks. And he's like, what? And Bart Ehrman says, well, yeah, you can tell that by the Bible, the transmission and looking at the textual variants and stuff, that the message is pretty uniform over the broad thing. And he said that even if we found the original manuscripts, I don't see them to be much different than what we see here, although that doesn't mean that they're true. And it kind of just shows you that even Bar Ehrman relents that he thinks the original manuscripts, if found, would not be much different than the copies that we have today, which shows how...
Where does he state that?
No, it was on I'll bring the YouTube clip. This was on a live
really
radio
great.
show.
Thank you, Seamus.
Yeah, the general message is pretty much the same, but again, if biblical inerrancy is so important and all the details, all the theology is so important that the Christians are actually killing each other over it, then this God should have done a better job in preserving it. But no one disputes, for example, that Christ was killed and raised from the dead. I mean they all agree with that. There's and
What I'm saying, even a secular textual scholar will admit that he believes even if we found the original manuscripts, it wouldn't be like, oh my God, we found the original manuscripts and look how contrived and screwed up they mess with it. He thinks that because of the earliness that we do have of manuscripts, that if we were to find the originals, that the message would be resoundingly the same or very, very similar, and that therefore it doesn't mean that Christianity is true, and that's where Bart's main point of contention is, that so what, they have a pretty reliable manuscript tradition. Big freaking whoop. Did the original authors convey the truth is the main point. And I think that that's kind of interesting when even a secular textual critic will admit that, the manuscript tradition is fairly reliable in its message. Anyways, I'm still finding a clip. I'm looking right now.
Cool, thanks. Who's in the room? Are you there, Art?
And probably everyone, I think a lot of people will take Floyd as pretty educated, and he seems to espouse a pretty similar opinion that if, I don't know, I don't want to misquote Floyd, but it seemed like he was saying that, if we found the original manuscripts, they probably would be pretty similar to what we already have. But, so what? Kind
of just to me, it's, my point was not that I'm doubting what you're saying, it's just I would like the exact phrase that he's using, because you phrased it 3 different ways that I've heard already, or maybe 2 different ways that I've heard already, and so I'm just trying to get to the meat of what he's actually saying. Is he saying the message is broadly similar, or is he saying the words are broadly similar, or is he saying if we found the manuscript we would in fact find it to be 99% the same as a later translation, or I don't know what he's saying yet.
I think if we found the originals, it would lack all the interpolations. I think there's a lot of interpolations in what we have now.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Bart Ehrman thinks that Mark has been added to. Is that correct?
Well, hardly anyone disputes the long ending of Mark. After Mark 16:8.
Obviously, that's not.
That's been added later.
That's obvious. That's been debunked.
Yeah, which is why I was trying to get you to be, or trying to find the quote that Bart's actually saying. He's making a serious point about biblical consistency.
But I bet the Pauline epistles would be quite different. I mean, not totally different, but it'd probably be a lot shorter. There'd be whole chapters not there. Of course, critical scholars, the majority of them think Paul only wrote 7 of the 13. But but a lot of things, there's interpolations within the 7 as well. But you know, someone could say, oh well, God wanted those interpolations in there.
No.
You know, you could always argue that thing.
I think you're speaking
he
kind of
wanted
broadly.
those changes.
I think you're speaking kind of broadly. Like, I mean, so you'd have to be like kind of more specific rather than just kind of say like blanketly like oh, there's a lot of interpolations in the epistles. Like, I mean, you brought up the long ending to Mark, which like there you cited a specific example, which I said that's for certain. That's a later addition. Most people, almost all people that have any sense in textual criticisms will grant that. But I haven't heard any other cases that you brought forth for interpolation, especially within the epistles.
Oh well, 1 Corinthians 15 verses in that's a very common one. I can list.
What's the argumentation? Well, don't just start listing verses. So 1 Corinthians 15. What's the argumentation behind the interpolation of that passage?
Well, part of it is it doesn't flow. The part, if you cut out what you think is interpolation, it flows more naturally. That's one example. I'd have to break open a book or find my notes if you really want to dig into it. But I could give you a list of them now if you're interested.
I would be interested actually. So, but I mean, you don't have to go digging for it right now. But like I said, just maybe in the future or something, shoot me a little link and say, hey, look, check this out. Look at this book. Look at this author or something.
Yeah. I could probably give you a quick list right now. Let's see.
Well, it's possible a lot of
quote.
Yeah, I'm still finding it right now. It's on a live radio show, and I know what the which radio show is. I'm just trying to find the episode, and I know the two guys that were sitting on the radio show, what they look like, so I should be able to find it pretty soon.
Okay, that'd be cool. I've seen a fair amount of Bart Ehrman, and I kind of think I remember what you're referring to, but I don't really think he was making a huge point by it. I think he was just being playing nice to the theist.
No, he wasn't playing nice to the theist. He was on an atheist radio show, and he stopped the show host dead in his tracks. The show host was visibly shocked and was like, "Oh my God, Bart Ehrman's agreeing with Christians that the Bible is reliable." And Bart Ehrman saw the look on his face and said, "Well, look, because the Christian message might be reliable to the original manuscripts, that doesn't mean that it's true." And you could see the guy kind of take a little exhale a little bit, and it was kind of funny because I guess he thought that Bart Ehrman was just there to completely bag on Christianity when actually he has some sense. He's a pretty honest guy and pretty well read on textual criticism.
Yeah, like 1 Corinthians 15:3 through 11 is considered interpolation. Chapter 11, 22 through 29. Chapter 13, 1 through 13. That's for 1 Corinthians.
And the argumentation to this end is that the passage would read better in flow if this part was removed.
That's just one reason.
What other?
There's more than one.
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't find that one very convincing. What are the others?
Some of the other reasons are it actually contradicts what's being said in other parts of the letter.
And that remains true for the gospel
writing style.
To some people,
seems to be different. Others is it presupposes later thoughts or events, things like that.
Well, if it presupposed a later thought that was written at a later time, I have thoughts all the time that I don't put to paper. So he could have been writing even though we're like, whoa, he seems to be presupposing a thought that he didn't express until 10 years later in this epistle. What? Just because he didn't express
later
it until
historical
10 years.
events. Or later historical.
Well, later, yeah. Now that would be a different thing, and if you would show evidence of that, I think that might be one of your strongest examples. If you had one of those to throw out, like, look here, where it was 52 AD, and clearly Paul is pointing to an event that happened in 60 AD. So this is obviously interpolation, because, and that would be, I'd have to tend to agree with that prima facie, because that would be something that would be pretty hard to reconcile. So do you have that particular evidence?
Well, we have that in the letters that scholars think